We're helping people communicate during a crisis. There could be a real threat where there's seconds to act. And so we can't have software that anything less than a couple clicks to get the word out and get that communication going.
You're listening to the Employee Safety Podcast from Alert Media, a podcast for professionals responsible for the safety and well-being of their employees. Each episode features an interview with a leader in employee safety to discuss how to protect your employees from a wide array of threats, from severe weather to a global pandemic. Let's get into the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Employee Safety Podcast, where we discuss insights and ideas for how to protect your most valuable asset, your people. I'm your host, Peter Steinfeld, and today is a special day on the Employee Safety Podcast. It's the 1-year anniversary of the show. I've interviewed more than 50 guests over the past year, including safety leaders, meteorologists, scientists, former intelligence officers, healthcare workers, consultants, and even CEOs, just to name a few. It's been an absolute honor to learn more about these guests' experiences, challenges, and the creative solutions they've implemented as they navigated a wild and unprecedented couple of years. And speaking of CEOs, I can't think of a better way to celebrate this milestone than to interview Brian Kruver, CEO and founder of Alert Media. Brian, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm great, Peter. It is fantastic to talk to you. I always enjoy talking to you. I do feel like I should be interviewing you. You're the expert in this industry.
Ooh, that would have been a nice twist. We should have done that.
We can do that next week. That can be episode 52.
There we go.
But yeah, no, it's great. Great to talk to you, and I'm excited to share the history of Alert Media and what we do for people.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for investing in this show and making it possible. I know it's a choice, and it's been a great one. It's been just a terrific experience for me, and I know our listeners value the content. And as you said, I believe they'll also appreciate hearing the background on how and why you created Alert Media and some of the lessons you've learned along the way.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Okay, super. Well, let's just start with the framework of how you became interested in emergency communications and then why you decided to explore it. Were there specific circumstances or events that influenced you in the past?
Yeah, I mean, looking back for sure, I just thinking about, growing up in Houston along the Gulf Coast, we had hurricanes. That was a pretty frequent occurrence during my childhood. I went to college in LA during the early 90s. When I was out there at USC, at the University of Southern California, we had the LA riots, we had the Northridge earthquake, we had Malibu wildfires. Obviously no idea at the time that I'd be getting into this a couple decades later. But all of those experiences, I think, are part of my perspective, part of my memory. And then fast forward to 2013, which is when I started to think about this idea for this company. That was around the time of the Newtown school shooting. If you remember that tragedy, that tragic event with the shooter in a school, and then the Boston Marathon bombing. I was, like most people, watching the news, watching those events unfold, just horrified and heartbroken. But one thing I started to notice and realize watching those events was there's this new thing called social media. We had Twitter and we had Facebook, and I had those applications on my phone. And if you really wanted to know what was going on and get sort of a real-time, firsthand perspective, you went to social media and you could get data and intel as those things were unfolded. I thought that was really fascinating. And I think in the early days, it was, those experiences growing up, plus this sort of shift in how communication was happening around 2013. That's really what led me in this direction to this idea.
Excellent. Well, a lot of people may not know this, but entrepreneurship really runs deep in your veins. It's in your blood. And Alert Media is not the first startup that you've been involved with.
It's not.
Can you offer maybe just a brief overview of some of the other business adventures you've been involved in and how you ultimately arrived at the idea of Alert Media?
Well, of course, as a kid, I was, trying to, sell baseball cards and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I've been involved in startups really going back to 2002, following my experience at Enron. I was one of the casualties, one of the people laid off from Enron. So for 20 years now, since then, I've been doing startups. I'll spare you the details on all the failures along the way. There were a few of those, but that's where you learn the most, right?
Yeah.
My most successful startup prior to Alert Media was a company called Xenex, Xenex. And we developed a germ zapping robot, which we provided to hospitals and other healthcare facilities. And we use those robots to kill germs and prevent infection and save lives. So that's been a rewarding experience to have started that company. And those robots are now in 1,000 hospitals around the world, saving tens of thousands of lives each year. That was the startup I did prior to Alert Media, which Alert Media I started again in 2013.
It seems like there's a theme here of setting up companies that really help people in emergency type situations.
There is.
What's behind that?
Yeah, I mean, go back to Enron, right? So I had that Enron experience. For those who are old enough to remember, it was 2001 when Enron went bankrupt. It was actually just a couple of months following September 11th. But that was I was living it right there in the middle of the trading floor at Enron. That experience. Coming out of that, it became representative of, kind of the wrong kind of company. It was all about the money and the greed and the bonuses and, how can everybody get rich at the expense, in a lot of ways, at the expense of others, not really providing anything of value to the world, in my view. So when I went on from that, I don't know, Peter, if we've talked about this, but I actually wrote a book about Enron following that experience.
That's right, yeah.
I spent a couple of years after Enron on a book and speaking tour talking about, business ethics and corporate responsibility and business failures and the Enron story. And after, 2 years of promoting the book and the movie and doing the speaking tour, I realized, hey, wouldn't it be great to create my own businesses, my own companies that did good things for the world? And so that's the theme, right? Again, not everything has worked out. I did a few things related to nonprofit tech, clean tech and those sorts of things. But yeah, getting to create a company like Xenex where we're saving lives literally with those germ robots. And now with Alert Media, where we're saving lives by changing outcomes and improving communication during disasters and when threats and incidents come up and threaten the safety of people and company operations. It's really, it's too good to be true, right? we and this, Peter, we sit around oftentimes just, we can't believe we've created this company with this great team and we're doing such amazing things for our customers, and it's a successful business as well. So it's very rare, I think. And, for me personally, to have done it twice with both the germ robots and now with emergency communication software, it's just a dream come true.
Yeah, without a doubt. And as you think about when you made your exit from Xenex and started a transition into creating what was then the very nascent stages of Alert Media, what was your thought process behind that? How did you really get into it and start moving forward?
Well, when I start companies, and again, I've learned this from failing a few times, I almost approach startups with a scientific method kind of view. Like it's all theoretical, right? You think if I create this thing, people will be interested in it, they will need it, they'll be willing to pay for it, to buy it, become customers. And so, in the beginning, I'm trying to prove it right or wrong, right? And trying to fail fast and figure out, is there a business here? And so, 2013, early 2014, myself and a couple of people I brought on to help me, we were doing just that. We were experimenting with, hey, if we create this communication platform, this new kind of software, will people be interested? And sure enough, we got, a dozen or two early customers that kind of proved it. And from there, then you're able to get funding and get more people to join the team and grow. And it's been as you know, Peter, you've been with us the last 5 years or so. It's been a wild ride and all up all the time. I'd call it a roller coaster, but it's much more like a rocket ship, the trajectory. And, now we have over 3,000 customers. So it's been really exciting and just a wonderful experience. And I think back, since you're asking me about my journey as an entrepreneur, it's everything I've learned, everything I've been through, everything I've done right and everything I've done wrong, it's kind of all come together with Alert Media for sure.
That's fantastic. Do you have any interesting customer stories from the early days of Alert Media that you could share with the audience? Perhaps some things that help shape the direction of the organization?
Yeah, I've hundreds of customer stories.
Just pick one or two.
Just pick one or two. How many hours do we have? I'll say this. Early on when you're starting, you're kind of willing to work with any kind of customer and solve any kind of problem. But in the early days, certain customers shaped, who we've eventually become, right? One of the early customers I remember was, and I won't name the name, but it was an automobile manufacturer in the Southeast. And there was a hurricane in the Atlantic off the coast, spinning and barreling toward the coast near where they had their big manufacturing facility. And they reached out to us. I guess they found us online doing a Google search. And they came in through our website. We directed them to an account rep who gave them a demo, and it was exactly what they needed to communicate with this hurricane coming toward them. We, quickly signed them up as a customer and handed them off to our customer success team, who set up their account and got them trained and got them up and running. And they were using our software to communicate about the hurricane 3.5 hours from when they first saw Alert Media in their Google search. So the idea that we can, help somebody out who's literally the clock is ticking, right? And they're under the stress of that situation. The hurricane's coming toward them and they're trying to figure out how they're going to handle it. The idea that we can act that fast, give them amazing service, but also that we have a communication platform, a software tool that's so simple that, and this is a big company. This is a small mom and pop business. This is a big company, implementing our software and using it within a couple of hours. That's unheard of in B2B enterprise software. So I think we all kind of, latched onto that story. Is that's the shining example of how we want to treat a customer who's in need, who needs our help. And we've been that way ever since. Again, Peter, as you know, we jump through every hoop imaginable to please our customers and make sure that our product works and works for them. So that was one of the early examples of us doing that. And I think that's, helped make us who we are.
So would you say as a leader of the organization, when you think of things at the 100,000 foot view, making the complex simple really informs a lot of what all the teams here do?
Absolutely. Simplicity is our strength. That is one of our core values at Alert Media. That's, again, going back to failed startups in my past. And just as a software user myself, right? Like, we all know this. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than, when things are complicated and you need to go, figure out the user manual or hit the help button. Especially with what we do, Peter, we're helping people communicate during a crisis. There could be a real threat where there's seconds to act. And so we can't have software that, anything less than, a couple clicks to get done what they need to get done and get the word out and get that communication going. So we've always focused on simplicity. It is, I think, why our product is superior, because it's very easy for the users. It's very intuitive. We don't spend a lot of time training people because it just makes sense. In the early days of design and development of the product, I would show it to my young kids who were at the time, they were in elementary school. And I would say, hey, does this screen make sense? Do you know what to do here? Do you know how to use this? And they would, tap their way through sending a notification. And it's, again, imagine the stress, our admin users are under when they're using our product. Imagine the time pressure, or imagine that they haven't had an emergency in a long time and it's been a while since they used our product. So it needs to be simple and intuitive, and there shouldn't be any complication at all to it.
Well, I know that kind of stuff is easy to do when a company is small, but Alert Media, as you said, has come a long way since 2013. So now we've got hundreds of employees and thousands of customers. So in your opinion, has the company stayed true to your original vision?
Oh, absolutely. And that is still, we are very much a customer first organization. That is the key to our culture. Everybody walks around with the idea that we are there serving a purpose, and that purpose is not ourselves, but it is the people who are depending on us. as we've grown, we've got a lot more to offer customers. I think that's the big change. There's so many more, bells and whistles and different ways that our customers can use Alert Media. We're now feeding global intelligence into our screens, so our customers can know from us first that something's happening in the world. Whatever that threat or that incident may be, they're going to hear about it from us first, and then they're going to use our product to communicate about it, and it's going to shave seconds or minutes, whatever amount of time, and that's going to make a huge difference. So we all walk around knowing that everything we do in our jobs is for that purpose, and that's why we've been successful. That's the reason that Alert Media is the company it is because everyone's bought into that mission and living it.
One of the tempting things when you're trying to build a company is to try to please everybody. And as you think about that from a CEO's perspective, how do you make those calls to say, yes, we could chase that business and it could be potentially profitable, but it's going to take us away from our core mission? How do you manage that in an organization?
Yeah, well, that's been one of my main jobs as CEO the last several years. Is there are so many shiny objects out there. We just have to keep everybody focused. There are still things, believe it or not, from 2013 when I was sketching out the idea in my garage, which I know is cliche. but those that list of ideas of all the big wonderful things we could be someday, we're still not even halfway through that list, and that's because we've got to keep focused. The focus again is really driven by customers, and at this point with thousands of customers, it is what's going to be useful to most or all of them. Right. So we've got a lot of things, hundreds of things, maybe even thousands of things that have been, one-off asks by individual customers. And so we do our best to solve the problem, to give them a solution with what our product currently does. But most of the things in our roadmap are things that all customers are wanting and all customers need, and we know would be useful to the millions of people out there that have Alert Media on their phones and other devices.
Yeah, customization, it can be a killer, whereas when you can scale something to help a lot of people, it can make a stronger product without a doubt.
Right.
Well, what's the biggest lesson you've learned as a leader throughout your time at this company or really any of the others you've led?
Biggest lesson as a leader, well, I've got to get my hands dirty. I mean, and this, Peter, when you joined the company, we were a lot smaller. We had 30 or so folks on the team, and I was out there with you on the middle of the sales floor, sharing a desk, if you recall.
I think you sat right behind me, so you could look over my shoulder and keep tabs on me.
No. I was within earshot of every sales and marketing person we had. So you and I both wanted to make sure that everybody was communicating the right way about who we are and what we do, and so we're as a leader, I guess it would be easy. I don't know. I guess it'd be easy to sit in a corner office and close the door and look at reports and open the door every now and then to yell at people. That's definitely not me. I'm very much the type to be in there doing the work with people so that I better understand the work, and I can learn from them and they can learn from me. And so I just think you got to be part of the action. I prefer to be part of the action, and that's how I've led not just this company, but previous companies. And that's worked well. I think the other thing I've learned over the years is to be super communicative and transparent and make sure that everybody in the organization knows everything that's going on. There's no secrets. There's no weird politics. There's no behind the scenes at Alert Media. Everything's out in the open, and everyone feels like they're part of it and they're part of those decisions, and they know what's going on, and no one's in the dark. And so I prefer to lead that way as well.
Yeah, it certainly makes a big difference and makes people feel like they're part of it instead of just showing up and being a cog, and they're not quite sure what their contribution is. So that's huge.
Right. And they're not sure what surprise is coming, right? What's the next thing that's going to pop up that they don't know about their company. We don't have any of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Well, as you look back over the last 8 years, what are you most proud of at Alert Media?
Definitely the team that we've assembled. I mean, I could not be more proud of this group. It's been really interesting in the past year and a half with the pandemic. We've hired about 150 people virtually.
It's amazing.
And a lot of those folks are working remote. So we have a lot of employees that I've never met face to face, but that doesn't make me any less proud of them or the work they're doing. But yeah, for sure, easy question, Peter. I'm most proud of the people that have believed in the story and who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, and they've joined this team and helped make us successful. It's been a pleasure to work with you and everybody else.
Well, likewise. Well, before we wrap up, I'm sure our audience would love to know what's next for Alert Media. So what goals or initiatives are you working on now?
Well, one thing that's really interesting about this business is the software we provide is useful to any organization on earth with more than, say, 50, 100 people. That's a lot of organizations around the world that could use Alert Media software. So it's still, even with over 3,000 customers, a lot of the Fortune 500, with all the customers we have at this point, it still feels like we're just getting started. Still feels like we're scratching the surface, and we know we have less than 1% of the total market that's out there. So there's a lot to do is the first part of my answer to that question. So, going international, going into different markets, we want to reach as many people as we possibly can. Again, with that mission in mind of helping people, keeping people safe and informed. Yeah. So with, several million folks using Alert Media, I'm not satisfied with that. I want to reach as many people as possible around the world. So a lot of growth. We're hiring like crazy. So anyone listening, send us your resume. We want to build this team and get our software into the hands of everybody we possibly can. One thing that's, interesting to me right now, and more specific to your question in terms of like product roadmap, is right now I'm really dialed into travelers, people out there working remote, the distributed workforce, right? Where companies have less control over where their people are and who's affected by different threats or incidents, right? So, that global intelligence offering that we now have, where we're giving threat warnings to folks, I think we're going to be focused on that and delivering those different features and functionalities through mobile to those end users. I mean, that's where the future is for us, at least for the next couple of years. I think product-wise, that's where we're going.
Fantastic. So, Brian, do we want to share with people the news about our new headquarters? Oh, wait a minute. I guess I just shared it.
Yeah, I think you just shared the news. Yeah, so we are very excited that we're getting a new headquarters. We're moving to downtown Austin, but it's across the water, by the lake, by the park, overlooking the beautiful scenery of downtown Austin. We're very excited about it. Actually toured the building today with the design architect to talk about the floor plan. Estimated to be, late spring, early summer of next year that we'll be moving into that new building. As is sort of the future of work, which we're very much bought into at Alert Media. This will be a hybrid space where you can imagine, people are spending quite a bit of time working remote, but coming in and out of the headquarters for various, collaborations and meetings and trainings and celebrations, and you name it. And so we're very excited to design that and build that out and launch that new headquarters coming up early next year.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here to help us celebrate the show's 1-year anniversary. And thank you for letting me participate in the journey. Cheers to many more years ahead.
Thank you. And congrats to you for 1 year's worth of podcasts. You've done a fantastic job with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone else out there for joining us on this special episode. Remember, nothing ever goes 100% according to plan in an emergency, so communication is incredibly important. If you can't communicate, you can't recover. Until next time.
Alert Media is changing the way your leaders and response teams connect and communicate effectively when seconds matter. We provide our customers with a comprehensive solution for monitoring threats around the world and deploying fast, effective emergency communication. You need a panic-proof solution for high-stakes moments. In just a few clicks, your team can send a multi-channel notification to an impacted group of people and confirm their safety immediately. When employee safety is at stake, don't just communicate. Connect and confirm with a robust emergency communication solution. Visit alertmedia.com for more information. You've been listening to the Employee Safety Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to give a quick rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.